Hello comic fans, here's Earl Grey. In uncertain times like ours, it's maybe some kind of trend or just reasonable to look back to get quite some kind of certainty, even though if you think about it, when there ever have been certainty and security all over the world. Anyhow, I don't know. But it occurred to me that a lot of comics that I've read in the last couple of months have this kind of nostalgia going on. Be it recently published comics, more or less recently published comics, or older comics that look back, like these comics from Yves and Luc Cornillon called Captivant. This is a German edition. The comics were drawn, obviously, end of the 70s, but look back to earlier comic times. So this book here is a huge homage to old comics, very old comics, Alec Raymond and the like. Luc Cornillon and Yves Chaland, sometimes they drew these comics together. Sometimes it's just one of them, and so they had a lot of material here going on that they arranged to some kind of fake comic book editions here, Captivant, and they pretend that this stems from 1951, which is obviously not the case. So this book here is quite naturally a hodgepodge of very different art styles, from Franco-Belgian funny style to other stuff, and even here Basil Wolverton is mentioned in the title, even though the style here is nothing Basil-like. Here, more rather EC comics. They get their little homage here as well, and the build of classic American comic books and serialized comics in European magazines like Spirou and Tintin as well. This is more the hip neo-ligne claire, for which at least Yves Chaland is very well known. I have to say that Luc Cornillon has never really crossed my path, but here is another character by one European cartoonist called Margerin, and so on and so on. Art-wise, really fun, but you can't expect really concluded stories here. These are just more or less experiments with different art styles and formats and false starts of stories that lead actually not very far, but to the end of the world. So even if I spoke in the beginning of finding security and old stuff, this here leads right to the apocalypse. This harmless looking book here. So yeah, there you got me spoilering everything here, but this is about art, folks, and about style, very much so. Good segue to Palookaville, the most stylish book that I got a couple of weeks. Cartoonist Kayfabe got me with this one here. A fantastic interview with Seth. I really recommend to watch it. And if it is just for the last 5 minutes or so, when Seth really has warmed up and gets really philosophical in the end, why humans are creative, and why creativity is really a part of humanity. This is my first Palookaville that I've bought and read. I've read It's a Good Life If You Don't Weaken, if I got the title right, and Clyde Fans before, these two highly praised books by Seth, that I really found a bit disappointing, maybe because of the high expectations, of the high praise, but somehow they didn't catch me as far as I hoped them to catch me. And design-wise, Palookaville here is great, but story-wise, boring is a bit hard to say, but it's fascinating to look at these very decorative pages, these there's a very simple but effective way of breaking up whole pictures into single panels and telling your story across, but always in these half sentences that wind up in some repetitive rhythm, da-ba-dup, 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 and this is almost the whole book here. So yeah, I found it a bit tough to really get through this book here, despite all its obvious beauty here. But these shortcuts for his trees, for instance, when you look at them the first time, beautiful. But when you have here in the back similar beautiful trees, of course, but it's yeah, it's a bit too much of the same, even though these stories here are really poetic, and maybe if you like John Porcellino's comics, these stories here are not so far from the poetic qualities of John Porcellino. So yeah, I'm a bit torn between finding these stories here really attractive and intriguing, but sometimes I thought, hey, why do you bother me with all these details from your past? Even though Seth is all about the details of his past. Mr. Oldtimey, as he described himself in the kayfabe interview. A huge part of the book is dedicated to the apology of Albert Batch, a film by Luc Chamberlain, which is devoted to a little theater that Seth created with his models and dolls there and all this self-made stuff that he likes to build out of cardboard and little wire, like Alexander Calder did decades ago, and which Seth says in a little foreword here that he is a big fan of, or was a big fan of Calder, and you can see this here. With all his tinkerings here, and this puppet theater piece is devoted to, no surprise, an old cartoonist, a make-up cartoonist, a fake cartoonist, if you will, and his fake life, or his life comes to life under the hands and the very idiosyncratic voice and tone of Seth there. Especially I liked the scene at the end of the video, of the film, when the cartoonist ponders upon his life on his deathbed. Here you can see somehow a bit younger Seth, almost 20 years younger than today, because the film was recorded 2004, and you got this on a little DVD at the end of the book here, in very stylish form. So yeah, a nice, neat package with very poetic stories at the end. Their title here were derived from flower names. This seems to was a little practice by Seth. Here he got a list of flower names from McConnell's flower catalog from 1967. Yeah, he's always a bit... when something is old, it has some extra value for Seth. Somehow I can cherish this concept. And then he took some of the names and made comics about them, like Eternal Flame. So, beautiful little book. Doesn't make me an instant Seth fan, but I'm working on it. Another American artist who is quite retrospective in his comics is Tim Lane, who has done some pages for I guess it's the most recent now, number 12 by Fantagraphics, in which he did again some piece about Steve McQueen, which is in a bigger sense a part of his examinations of the American dream, about the American mythos. And Steve McQueen plays obviously a big part in his figuring out what the American myth actually is about. So there's some kind of introduction in pictures and in words about this stuff that he's doing here, and very different in style, obviously. And Funtime Funnies, there's nothing fun about this story here. Actually, this is quite depressing. We witness little Stevie having to experience or being confronted with the very problematic love life of his mother that you can see here with different men. He's drawn without a mouth, so that speaks more than anything else could do. He hides under the bed while the lovers of his mother fight over the right to make love to her, or what they seem to call love, and he wakes up to this kind of scenery. And yeah, it's a very touching story, done in this deceivingly innocent format here that relates back to the old funny comic books. Maybe my favorite, my favorite for sure of all these here is Rich Tommaso. Especially the first issue here of, or can you call this an issue? This is actually a volume of Black Phoenix, a one-man anthology. It's all Rich Tommaso from the first to the last page. It seems that he wants to put out 2 volumes each year, and I really hope that he will continue with this run here. Because especially the first one here was great. Here we can... Actually, I haven't seen a picture by him. Maybe he's just fooling us, giving us some biography here in this very retro style. And a lot of these advertisements from way back then, obviously recreated by him or redone, changed a bit, and giving us the flair of these old magazines. A part of it is this cheapo paper, but it's really this paper really does the trick here and gives us this retro feeling. And for these more or less light colors in this book here, it's perfect. You can see sometimes the art, or there's a bit of shining through the art from the next page, but this is maybe the only problem that you can have with this kind of design. But again, I found it really perfect, especially the change of coloring scheme. It's a lot of two-tone, but sometimes it changes to 4-color. And these stories here pretend to be drawn by different artists or cartoonists, but obviously Riffefi and all the others here collected in this book are all aliases, pseudonyms for Mr. Rich Tommaso. Yeah, and the stories are interconnected in this first volume a lot, so they are pieces of a big jigsaw puzzle that that belong together and give you a bigger picture, so that all these different stories here add up to, let's say, 3 or 4 stories all in all. And I really hoped that he would continue with this sort of storytelling, because I think this suits him very well. I did a video about Rich Tommaso before, in which I sort of was torn between his art, this retro art I really like a lot, reminds me a bit of Ligne Claire, European Ligne Claire, and combines these sensibilities with American approaches, which I always find fascinating. But story-wise, he seems to get bored with his stories after a while, and always never manages to stick the landing in the end. So I found it a good trick of him to make a book with lots of starts, and starting here a story, and then starting another story, and then continuing with the next story, so that he doesn't get bored with his own hyperactivity, jumping from one story to another, and in the end you get a final product with good stories. Well, so while Black Phoenix was all about crime comics, not very new ways of telling crime comics, new is maybe his way of irony in picking up tropes and playing with certain elements of these stories, but don't expect too much innovative of these comics here. But I had a blast with this book here, and was exactly what I wanted out of it. So I expected volume 2 more of the same, boring me here. But Rich Tommaso said, no, I try a new genre and give it my Rich Tommaso treatment here. And these are, for the most part, romance comics and mixing in a bit of horror. And even though this book here is a bit more lackluster than the first, a bit more starting stories that lead to nowhere, so yeah, but I get it why he doesn't continue them, because some, especially these love stories here, it's totally clear where they lead to, and then you can really interrupt them, or yeah, just continue or start with the next story here. But this story here is something that will continue. The story here, Swamp Bat and the Vampire Cat, a bit similar to stuff that he did before. So a lot of yeah, cute women and handsome males fighting it out. Who gets the devil and who gets Venus? Quite frankly, when it turns to horror, it becomes a bit more interesting to me. Overall, no regrets of picking this one here up, and I will continue with Black Phoenix for sure. But yeah, I repeat myself. Black Phoenix #1 was quite more interesting to me. So yeah, that's all for now that I wanted to show you. Thanks for listening and watching. Goodbye.